Hey guys, and welcome to a showdown featuring myself under the guise of Melon Lord up against RTK's very own Eldelmo, coming in with the forces of the Lizardmen, and I am going to be in charge of Bretonnia. I know guys, shock and horror, me playing Bretonnia, especially up against my favourite Dino boys. What blasphemy is this? And it's a very interesting matchup, that's what it is. So, Bretonnia versus Lizardmen has been widely considered to be very Lizardmen favoured for a very long time for the majority of kind of the game's length, although recently people have come around to the idea that mass peasant bowmen can do a pretty decent job here, especially when the changes to poison happen, so you don't poison your own knights when they're charging into the fray. And I think it's a little bit more even, but still a little bit Lizardman favoured, so we'll have to see how we do fare up against the mighty opponent. So we have peasant mobs dotted along the front line. Of course, any Bretonnia build isn't fit without a sway of these horribly disgusting peasant folk. And they're not here to do any damage at all, really. They're here to help push away units, take the initial charge, and delay the engagements. Basically, they're meat shields, but we just kind of like to spruce it up a little bit. In the secondary line, we have some spearmen at arms. These more stalwart folk are here to hold the line when the peasants do indeed crumble, and buy time for our peasant archers, who mainly do have pox arrows dotted all the way along. Looks like 4 units, or 5 units to be precise, do the damage, and that poison's really going to help slow down the Dino tide and allow our knights to get even more favourable engagements. Now for knights, we do have triple question knights, including the Regiment of Renown version, and the reason I bring the, not necessarily the Regiment of Renown, because they do come with anti-large, but the regular question knights are anti-infantry. But the reason I'm bringing them is they're a bit more dual purpose, you get a bit more bang for your buck, in the fact that they'll be able to tear through Saurus and really help with cycle charging up against Temple Guard, and they still have decent AP that can help pull down mighty dinosaurs. And if my opponent has gone incredibly hard with like a, double Stegodons or double Carnosaurs and the like, we still have a ton of peasant bowmen to help whittle them down, as well as the mighty King Leon Luancoeur up in the skies, and he's very potent and deadly in this matchup. Sword of Corone is a fantastic hex ability. He also has the Lion's Shield, which really helps out against Chameleon Skink, Solar Engine Fire, coming with that missile and magic resistance. Stand Your Ground and Foe Seeker are going to be active as well. With a Field Trebuchet protected by a unit of Spearmen at Arms. Field Trebuchet just to entice in the Lizardmen and try to do damage to elite targets such as Temple Guard, Saurus, elite Saurus units and all that kind of good stuff. We have a Damsel of Life. Of course, you're always pretty much going to bring a Damsel of Life when you bring the King to try and help keep him healed up. He does have regeneration, but, a Regrowth, Shield of Thorns, and Earthblood are certainly never a miss, especially with a Scroll of Shielding and Power Stone to round out the build. So, yeah, really fun stuff. We're taking a defensive approach, pushing forward as much as possible to keep my opponent away from my archers and trebuchet, and then doing the big hits with the King and the cavalry. Now for my opponent, he has a really cool build. It's kind of very meta, but at the same time with a few little changes. So we have 4 units of Pterodon Riders now. This is pretty unique. You often see 2 to 3 units of these bad boys. Their rock drops can really help clear out peasant bowmen very quickly, and he's going to need them to wrap up the bowmen, because apart from that, he has a very slow force. So he's an absolute doombox of just Saurus Spears, which did get a little bit of an AP increase, so I think they're actually a lot more competitive than they once were, which is nice to see because you basically never saw them originally. So we do have 1, 2, 3, 4 units of them, one of which is the Legion of Chaquois, the Regiment of Renown version, which have a pretty cool ability, which gives them the plus 44% missile resistance to all allies within 30 meters for a short duration. Of course, it is an ability you have to activate. It's not a constant. Of a unit of Temple Guard as well. These guys do have a chevron on them, and these guys, just a little bit more elite, going to really help drag down cavalry. But because he's gone with so many Pterodons, he's not going to be able to have as many Temple Guard as most Lizardmen players do enjoy. We have double Bastiladons with Solar Engine here to blind a lot of the knights, but also help finish off the peasant archers where possible. And we have Lord Mazdamundi on the mighty Zlak, and this Lovecrafting creature is certainly going to be fantastic here. The Ruination of Cities as well as Banishment will really help clear out peasant archers very quickly. We have Shield of the Old Ones to help support his troops. Apotheosis and Net as well I quite like. And the Sunburst Standard is going to give lovely missile resistance to all nearby troops, as well as some added melee defense. But yeah, I think the Net's a really good idea. Knights come charging in, you net them in place, and then allow the Temple Guard to do the dirty work. But let's get this battle underway. So Field Trebuchets are loading up, going to be launching into the forces, probably aiming for the Temple Guard for the most part. And as you can see, the health actually works for me here. The Solar Engine's trying to fire in, but only finding sand and dirt. It's kind of funny that actually shoot into the back of their own units and even hit in the mighty Lord Mazdamundi. I'm sure that wasn't part of the Great One's plan. So the Saurus shields are getting a hit, as well as Temple Guard by trebuchets. Of course, not the most accurate of folk, but still doing some okay damage from long range and forcing this slow-moving box into the engagement. We're going to be pushing up the Peasant Bowmen as well now to try and do some decent damage. And we're just going to be raining down fire where we can. Looks like at the moment on the Temple Guard and the Legion, more rocks coming in. Peasant mobs will be cheering as they see the mighty companions charge directly into the front line, sending some of these Saurus flying before falling back once more. And similar situation is happening all across the battlefield. Quest Knights coming in here, did a little bit of damage to the Temple Guard before falling back, buying more and more time for the archers to really do the dirty work. Pterodons a little bit stagnant on the flanks. They need to get in here and start pressuring. Honestly, just line yourself up, drop the rocks, and maybe even suicide charge in, because you need to shut down those Peasant Bowmen. I know it's not very cost effective, but they basically have to go down, otherwise the box build will really struggle. So the King Leonlurker has been netted up in the skies, but with the Lion Shield active, and the Bastiladons do magic damage, so we're getting 44% missile resistance and 44% magic resistance against their shots. He's basically taken 0 damage here. Temple Guard being really dragged through the mud right now, quite low on HP. Still getting 30 kills, but a lot of it is on Peasant Mobs, of course, as double Quest Knights slam in, one from the flank, one from the front, trying to break these guys, as of course they are poisoned, and more arrows do fill the sky, but it looks like Saurus with spears are counter-punching, so we're going to have to fall back with our cavalry, although one unit does kind of get tied in here a little bit too much, sandwiched between the two. Saurus Warriors, the Legion of Shaquai, in fact, are desperately trying to push through, and they've met the secondary lines. So Spearmen at Arms have been called to arms here, trying to hold the line desperately. We still have a couple of units in reserve that we can push forward when needed. King Leonlurker is going to be trying to return to the fray to help support up against these Pterodon riders, and a banishment attempt was luckily spotted by me. Peasant Bowmen going to be able to flee before it can do any damage to them, and it looks like the solar engines are now starting to focus down the field trebuchets. They've had enough of those that bombardment, up to 23 kills on these guys, and really want to shut them down. Pterodons can simply lurk in the wings for now. Peasant Bowmen are going to be loosing shots into the Saurus spears. They do have shields though, so they're taking a huge amount of firepower. Companions once again falling back after doing some effective cycle charging. Looks like the damsel is going to be healing up some of our glorious knights. Knights simply bouncing from combat to combat at this point, and somehow the Peasant Mobs are holding the line in a desperate fight for their lives up against these creatures. Imagine being a peasant, all you've ever seen is humans, and you have to come and face a giant lizard with a skull on its head as dinosaurs walk in the background. It's not a very fun time. In the distance, you can see the king. I haven't been super aggressive with him yet. We've been relatively kind of conservative with him and reserved. We've just used him to push away the Pterodons, trying to keep our range force active. I don't want to commit him to a fight too early and have him pinned in by a lot of these nasty creatures. We do have another Earthblood come in as a load of the Quest Knights do charge down Mazdamundi. The Companions of Cornelis are going to do some good damage. It looks like one of those Knights was actually kind of just skirting along this Temple Guard here. And, maybe he's going to get in there and do a duel. Bam! And he decapitates the Temple Guard, dragging him down to the floor. That actually might have been a Saurus Spearman there instead. The king has darted down onto some more spearmen, just trying to help the Spearman Arms hold the line even longer. But he's going to be hunting down Pterodons where he can. Now, it's like I didn't notice at the time, is the double Bastiladons switch targets. They destroy the field trebuchets relatively well, and now they're focusing down the dams, and without that healing, things will get very, very tough for us. So we're going to be dropping a regrowth, which does manage to pop, but we have broken here. So if these Pterodons do hunt us down, we could be in trouble. Now, every time the Pterodons do fly over, I am focus firing them with all my Peasant Bowmen. You can see the ones on the left have pretty much been dealt with at this point. Some of them have got their rock drops off, others haven't, but I'm really trying to keep the Peasant Archers online for as long as possible. I think they're the key to victory here. We do manage to drag Mazdamundi away from the battle. He's chasing away 3 units though, so these guys could turn to engage, but I want to kind of mop up the rest of the build before hunting down and committing to a fight up against the big monster himself. And even the king, who could come over here and duel him rather effectively, is going to be falling back to try and save the peasants. Pterodon riders are swooping in and helping to rout a unit of Peasant Bowmen. Escort them off the field would be a good idea, as those peasants still have plenty of juice left to come back and fire some shots in. More Peasant Bowmen are trying to do some crossfire, but Saurus are now pushing through the front line, and the last bastion of strength in this unit of Spearmen at Arms is going to be darting forward to try and save the archers. It looks like the field trebuchet has now lost all its models, but it did a good job overall. 36 kills, not the craziest damage stats across the board, but it really forced the enemy to come to me, which is what we needed to happen in this moment. Now, Vamantok does come down, but luckily for me, I spotted it. We managed to peel off with 1 unit of Quested Knights, so we won't be away from battle too long. That Ruination of City is the last blast, catching a few knights, but for the most part, it only slew 2 models. So nothing too bad there. regrowth does come down on these Question Knights as the Damsel returned to the field. Pterodon Rider has been used very effectively over on this left-hand side to shut down the Peasant Bowman. A solar engine fire does continue to rain in, although it looks like ammunition is starting to get deadly low. Peasants now pouring fire down on top of Lord Mazdamundi, and yes, he's going to have that missile resistance, but you fling enough arrows at something that can bleed, it will eventually die. Over in the distance, we can see more Pterodon Riders trying to feast on some helpless peasant mobs. We're going to attempt to swarm back as well. And the Temple Guard have now been finally shattered. Those guys fought for an absolute age, considering the punishment they took early on. Didn't get the most value though, but still 121 kills. Many a peasant has fallen tonight. Lovely banishment by my opponent coming down on the peasants as well. Looks like the damsel may be done for. She's fleeing for the hills for now. Apotheosis has been popped on Lord Mazdamundi. Spooner Arms tried to come to her aid before thinking, you know what, even though she's a damsel and she's in distress, we're no knights, so we're also going to run. And all of a sudden, a huge chunk of my force starts routing from the field, and this is very scary. So we still have the Question Knights, we still have our elite troops. We're trying to break units where possible, cycle charging in with these Question Knights who can do okay in sustained combat, but yeah, really need to cycle them as much as possible. Trying to hammer down these Saurus from multiple angles, but they're going to be able to realign themselves each time. Hopefully we can break the back of them here. The king as well, desperately trying to bounce onto Mazdamundi, but the Pterodon Rider has been used in a sacrificial state to just kind of keep the king busy and muck up his charges, and that's going to allow Mazdamundi to hunt down a load of these units, and the balance power will start to normalise here if these guys do get forced off the field. But the king is finally free from those pesky Pterodons and coming in for the charge on an isolated Lord Mazdamundi. Now, Shield of the Old Ones has gone down, as well as an Apotheosis, but the Sword of Corone lowering that armour to 100, and minus melee defense is really helpful. Stand your ground popped on the king, not going to be taking too much damage, and we are hitting Mazdamundi in the back, which is pretty key. Even the Trebuchet crew are going to be darting over to help support. Now, we have managed to rescue a few of these troops on this flank, although Question Knights have been dealt with. It looks like one unit stayed in combat a little too long. However, the companions at Quinnell are relatively okay, so they should be able to come back and help support, and more Question Knights are darting on the approach. Looks like a net of Amantalk did hit the king, allowing Mazdamundi to escape and push forward to once again try to finish off these peasant bowmen. And with a thunderous charge through the thicket of trees, and a thicket of blood now as well. Those peasants just shatter instantly, but in come the knights for vengeance, and the king does strike from the sky, swooping down upon Mazdamundi and Mazdabuti, I'm just calling him there, and Zlak himself. The king is pretty much full health at this point, and this is one of the advantages I had of using him really reserved. He's not going to get the most value, but he's always in our back pocket that we can now swoop in and finish off someone like Maz when we 100% know he's going to be isolated. Even the companions who darted all the way along the width of the battlefield there to come to our aid, and most of the peasants are being wrapped up at this point, but there's only broken Saurus spears left, just 3 units of them, some Pterodons, and a Bastiladon which has no ammunition. The king can carry this on his back, and it looks like army losses are just about to set in. The Lizardmen forces routing from the field, and it was a crazy fight for sure. So a Pyrrhic victory there for the forces of Bretonnia. Very fun stuff. Massive shout out to my opponent though, Aldelmo, the RTK representative. Really awesome guy. Played him a couple of times. Very talented player. And yeah, if you ever see him on ladder, give him a quack quack from me. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, feel free to give the video a big old thumbs up and subscribe for more Total War Warhammer content. We have videos every single day. Well, at least we try to. Now, for my build, as you can see, the king still got pretty fantastic value and damage dealt, mainly by hunting down Mazdamundi, but his main job here was just to push away those Pterodon Riders and come in for those big alpha strikes, and he was still full health at the end, which not only helps with the balance of power, but also means, you know, at the end, I think he could have, even if the rest of this build was unbreakable, he could have killed them relatively comfortably. Damsel did okay as well, getting off some Earth Bloods, and Rigos did have to waste one on herself because a bit of poor micro from me. But apart from that, I think we played it relatively well, I'm happy to say. The peasant mobs held the line heroically for a pretty decent time. I was just surprised how long some of them held, especially up against the elite Temple Guard, and in the secondary battle line as well of men-at-arms did the job to allow the peasant bowmen just to rain down fire. And you'll see, not the craziest damage stats along the board, but it all adds up over time. Quest Knights as well, some good cycle charging all round for the most part. One unit kind of got caught at the end and dragged down, but the others did some really good damage value throughout, and slowly we dragged the Doombox through the dirt and managed to claim a victory with the help of the Trebuchet. Now, for the Lizardman build, I'm actually a big fan of this build. I think it is very deadly. The one problem that kind of was the main problem here, I suppose, was the Bastillons couldn't really shut down the Peasant Bowmen quick enough. In the end, they got fantastic damage value and certainly paid for themselves. But the units which struggled the most were the Pterodon Riders. You can see across the board, not getting the most value. And their main goal is to shut down the Peasant Bowmen. That should be the main forefront of their minds. Yes, you can chase down units and stuff afterwards, but there's a secondary objective. So what you need to do is, line up a unit over each Peasant Bowman and drop rocks. And he did do that successfully. I managed to dodge a few as well because I was really very observant of it, because I knew one of my win conditions was these archers have to stay online to poison and slow down the enemy troops. But I think maybe even just suicide darting in a little bit early on forced me to take the knights away from the front line and help defend the back line. I think would have been a worthy sacrifice. They might not have got so much damage over the course of the battle, but pulling those knights back, the Saurus, Temple Guard and Mazdamundi helped to grind down the front line even quicker, and then all of a sudden you're in the back line, you can swarm, there's nothing left to protect. But still, really fantastic work all round. And the Temple Guard, I love to see them in action. Unfortunately, terrible damage value for them this game, but still did a pretty good slaughter. And Mazdamundi being a real good backbone for this build, coming in and supporting. I really like the combination of him and the Legion of Shaquar with their double missile resistance stacking on top of each other. Can, certainly neuter a lot of the effectiveness of these units like the Peasant Archers and Trebuchets, which are so key in this matchup. Well, guys, hope you did enjoy. If you want to support the channel in any way, there is links down below to how you can do that via Patreon, as well as a link to my Discord if you want to submit replays to the channel, get involved in the tournament scene, or just hang out with a load of really cool guys. So until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome.